August 20th, 1944, Buchenwald concentration camp, Germany. SS Hauptscharführer Klaus Weber checked his watch as the cattle cars ground to a halt outside the camp gates. 5 days from Paris, crammed with 1,850 prisoners. The Americans would be broken by now. Weber had read the intelligence files. Luxury-raised airmen from a nation of ice cream shops and movie theaters. The Gestapo in Paris reported these terror flyers had already cracked during preliminary questioning, begging for better food, warmer cells. Perfect candidates for immediate intelligence extraction. The first boxcar door slid open. Weber expected the usual sight. Stumbling figures, hollow stairs, men reduced to survival instinct. Instead, 42 American enlisted men stepped down in precise formation. Shoulders back, eyes forward, boots moving in synchronized steps across the camp's mud. Weber blinked. These prisoners maintained perfect posture despite 5 days without food or water. Their uniforms hung in tatters, faces gaunt from the journey, yet they moved like soldiers on parade. Behind them, 40 American officers emerged, immediately organizing their men into neat ranks. The German guards exchanged glances. In 2 years at Buchenwald, they had seen political prisoners, resistance fighters, Jewish families, all arrived broken, defeated, barely human. These Americans looked ready for inspection. Weber watched Squadron Leader Phil Lamason, a tall New Zealander, assume command of the Allied Airmen. The officer's eyes swept the camp with tactical assessment, not fear. He issued quiet orders that produced instant compliance. Men who should have been crawling formed disciplined columns. Weber's confidence wavered. The SS had planned swift interrogations, extracting bombing routes, target lists, base security details from demoralized airmen desperate for basic comforts. These Americans displayed something German intelligence hadn't anticipated: unshakable military discipline that seemed to intensify under pressure. What had Berlin missed about American military training that could produce soldiers who grew stronger in hell itself? May 27, 1944. Wolf's Lair, East Prussia. Adolf Hitler's directive to Japanese ambassador Hiroshi Oshima was clear. American terror flyers deserved immediate execution, not prisoner of war treatment. By August, this philosophy had evolved into something more sophisticated. Dead airmen provided no intelligence. Broken airmen revealed everything. Prinz Albrechtstraße 8, Berlin, Gestapo headquarters, SS Oberführer Heinrich Müller spread intelligence dossiers across his mahogany desk. 3 years of meticulous surveillance had produced comprehensive files on American bomber operations. Radio intercepts revealed squadron movements. Captured documents detailed base security, and interrogated airmen had inadvertently exposed navigation procedures. The Americans broadcast nearly every operational detail over unencrypted radio channels. German listening posts recorded weather reports, mission changes, even personal conversations between air crews. Müller's analysts knew which bomb groups operated from which English bases, identified individual aircraft by radio call signs, and tracked pilot rotation schedules. But the intelligence files revealed something more valuable than tactical data: American character weaknesses. Medical records from captured airmen showed average heights of 5'10" and weights exceeding 170 pounds. Products of abundant nutrition unknown in wartime Germany. These men grew up with unlimited food, heated homes, and soft beds. Interrogation reports described homesickness, complaints about British weather, constant requests for American cigarettes and coffee. The strategic calculation Müller's deputy, SS Standartenführer Walter Schellenberg, argued for a revolutionary approach. Traditional prisoner of war camps followed Geneva Convention protocols: adequate food, heated barracks, recreational activities. German airmen received similar treatment in Allied camps. This civilized arrangement produced minimal intelligence value. Concentration camps offered different possibilities. Buchenwald's reputation preceded its reality. Most prisoners arrived already psychologically defeated. The facility processed political enemies, resistance fighters, and civilians accustomed to harsh conditions. American airmen raised in luxury would experience unprecedented shock. Schellenberg's psychological assessment predicted rapid intelligence breakthroughs. Hunger would overcome training. Cold would shatter resolve. The sight of genuine starvation and death would terrify Americans into cooperation. Within weeks, maybe days, the SS would possess complete knowledge of Allied bombing strategy. The intelligence windfall. The expected revelations were staggering. American bombers followed predictable patterns: weather-dependent timing, consistent approach routes, limited target selection. Once broken, airmen could reveal upcoming missions, allowing German fighters to position for maximum interception. Navigation secrets would expose how American formations found targets through cloud cover and darkness. Base security details offered even greater prizes. How many aircraft did each English airfield house? Which squadrons were rotating home? What were the fuel and ammunition storage locations? A single cooperative airman could provide intelligence worth dozens of reconnaissance flights. More importantly, American production capabilities remain mysterious. German analysts estimated maximum annual aircraft production at 50,000 units. If accurate, the bombing campaign represented unsustainable losses. Breaking American morale through captured aircrew intelligence could accelerate surrender negotiations. The Fresnes collection point Fresnes prison outside Paris became the experimental staging area. SS interrogators processed captured airmen through preliminary questioning, identifying officers, specialists, and psychologically vulnerable individuals. The results exceeded expectations. Americans complained constantly about food quality, cell temperature, and separation from personal belongings. Unlike German or Russian prisoners who maintained stoic silence, Americans demanded explanations for every inconvenience. They questioned authority, expected comfortable treatment, and showed visible distress when denied basic luxuries. SS psychological profiles classified them as high-maintenance prisoners with low stress tolerance. The decision crystallized. Buchenwald would provide the psychological pressure traditional interrogation couldn't achieve. American airmen would witness genuine starvation, systematic brutality, and industrial-scale death. Their civilized upbringing provided no preparation for concentration camp reality. August 15, 1944, the transport decision. Weber received his orders alongside detailed prisoner manifests. 168 Allied airmen, including 40 American officers with access to classified operational data. The transport would take 5 days in overcrowded cattle cars. Standard procedure for civilian prisoners. Violation of Geneva Convention for military personnel. But these weren't traditional prisoners of war. Hitler's directive reclassified terror flyers as criminals and spies. Concentration camp conditions were legally justified, morally necessary, and strategically brilliant. The intelligence expectations seemed conservative. Most civilian prisoners broke within their first week at Buchenwald. Professional soldiers might resist longer, but American luxury culture provided no foundation for enduring genuine hardship. German estimates predicted complete intelligence cooperation within 2 weeks of arrival. Weber studied individual files. Navigator Lieutenant James Hastings from Chicago shot down over occupied France. Bombardier Captain William Percival from Detroit, captured while evading through Belgium. Radio operator Sergeant Roy Allen from California, wounded during bailout. Each represented specific intelligence value, navigation techniques, bombing accuracy methods, communication procedures. The systematic approach. Buchenwald offered scientific interrogation possibilities unavailable in military camps. Controlled malnutrition would weaken physical resistance. Exposure to executions would shatter psychological defenses. Work assignments in V2 rocket factories would demonstrate German technological superiority while extracting technical knowledge about American systems. The concentration camp environment provided additional leverage. Americans would witness other prisoners dying daily from starvation, disease, and execution. This psychological pressure, combined with basic survival needs, would overcome military training and patriotic conviction. Weber anticipated complete success. German intelligence possessed detailed knowledge of American operational procedures, aircraft specifications, and bomber crew training. What remained unknown was American strategic planning, future target selection, and production capabilities. Buchenwald's unique environment would extract these final secrets from prisoners whose comfortable lives had never prepared them for genuine suffering. The cattle car transport to Buchenwald represented more than prisoner movement. It was psychological warfare designed to exploit perceived American weakness and extract intelligence that could change the war's trajectory. Maxwell Field, Alabama, January 1943. While German pilot training collapsed to 6 months of desperate instruction, the United States Army Air Forces maintained an 18-month systematic development program that German intelligence completely misunderstood. Aviation cadet Phil Lamason progressed through a pipeline designed by industrial engineers, not military traditionalists. The American approach treated leadership development like mass production, standardized procedures creating consistent results across thousands of candidates. Pre-flight school eliminated 40% of applicants through academic and psychological screening. Primary flight training removed another 30% who couldn't master precise aircraft control. Advanced training cut an additional 20%, leaving only candidates who demonstrated exceptional decision-making under pressure. German training programs compressed by wartime necessity graduated pilots with 160 flight hours. American airmen accumulate 320 hours before receiving wings, plus 200 additional hours in operational training. This doubled preparation time reflected industrial abundance. America possessed surplus fuel, aircraft and instructors while Germany rationed everything. Fort Benning, Georgia, Officer Candidate School. The leadership development system that produced Squadron Leader Lamason originated in American democratic principles that German observers found incomprehensible. Officer Candidate School deliberately mixed college graduates with high school dropouts, creating leaders through merit rather than social class. Candidates endured systematic stress testing designed by psychologists studying human breaking points. Sleep deprivation exercises lasted 72 hours. Physical challenges exceeded combat requirements. Academic pressure eliminated candidates who memorized procedures without understanding principles. The program intentionally created crisis situations requiring instant leadership decisions. German officer training emphasized obedience to superior orders and class-based authority structures. American training produced independent decision-makers capable of assuming command when hierarchies collapsed. Every American officer learned to operate without supervision, coordinate with unfamiliar units, and maintain discipline during catastrophic failures. Tactical school integration. The Air Corps. Tactical school at Maxwell Field revolutionized military education through systematic analysis of leadership under extreme stress. American instructors studied British Battle of Britain experiences, Russian front reports, and captured German training documents to identify psychological breaking points. The curriculum included specific modules on prisoner of war survival based on World War I analyses and Spanish Civil War observations. Students learned psychological resistance techniques, information compartmentalization, and stress management under interrogation pressure. These weren't theoretical exercises. Instructors created realistic capture scenarios with actual physical and psychological stress. Industrial scale leadership production. America's demographic advantage enabled unprecedented officer production volumes. Between 1940 and 1945, the United States trained 320,000 military officers through systematic programs. Germany managed approximately 80,000, mostly through expedited wartime courses that eliminated psychological preparation. The American system processed candidates through identical training pipelines regardless of background. Rural farm boys from Iowa received identical instruction as Harvard graduates from Massachusetts. This standardization created predictable leadership quality across all units. German intelligence couldn't identify weak links because none existed. Physical conditioning revolution. American military nutrition represented technological advancement that German intelligence failed to recognize. Standard military rations provided 4,500 calories daily, exceeding German civilian food allowances. American recruits averaged 5'10" and 170 pounds compared to German soldiers at 5'7" and 145 pounds. Physical training programs emphasized endurance over strength, psychological resilience over aggressive intimidation. American airmen completed obstacle courses, endurance marches, and survival exercises that German training programs had eliminated to save time. This physical preparation created psychological confidence. Americans entered combat knowing their bodies could endure extreme hardship. Psychological conditioning systems. The American approach to mental preparation reflected democratic society's emphasis on individual value and personal responsibility. Military psychologists developed stress inoculation techniques that gradually increased pressure while maintaining psychological support systems. German training emphasized group loyalty through intimidation and punishment. American methods built individual resilience through progressive challenge and achievement recognition. This fundamental difference created soldiers who maintained personal integrity under pressure rather than depending entirely on group cohesion. Code of conduct development. American military doctrine evolved beyond traditional European concepts of honor and surrender. The developing code of conduct emphasized individual responsibility to resist interrogation while maintaining psychological health during captivity. Training included specific resistance techniques, compartmentalizing sensitive information, maintaining military bearing regardless of conditions, and using capture as an opportunity to gather intelligence about enemy capabilities. These weren't desperate survival tactics. They represented systematic preparation for extended prisoner of war experiences. Intelligence resistance training. American security consciousness exceeded German expectations because it operated through democratic transparency rather than authoritarian secrecy. Aircrews received detailed briefings about enemy interrogation techniques, psychological pressure methods, and information security procedures. The training emphasized that successful resistance required understanding enemy capabilities and limitations. American airmen learned to identify German intelligence gaps, recognize interrogation patterns, and provide misleading information that seemed cooperative while revealing nothing valuable. Systematic quality control. The American training pipeline included continuous evaluation and adjustment based on combat feedback. Returned veterans provided detailed debriefings that immediately updated training curricula. Combat lessons integrated into instruction within months, not years. This systematic improvement process created progressive enhancement of leadership quality throughout the war. Early 1942 graduates differed significantly from 1944 airmen who benefited from 3 years of combat experience integration. Democratic leadership philosophy. The fundamental difference between American and German officer development reflected political systems that German intelligence never understood. Democratic societies required leaders who could operate independently, make decisions without superior guidance, and maintain effectiveness when command structures collapsed. German training produced excellent followers who executed orders with precision but struggled when isolated from command hierarchy. American training created leaders capable of rebuilding command structures from individual initiative and personal authority. Resource abundance application. America's industrial capacity enabled training luxuries impossible in Germany. Flight simulators, realistic combat scenarios, extensive ammunition for live-fire exercises, and unlimited fuel for extended training flights created airmen with confidence based on extensive preparation. German pilots entered combat with theoretical knowledge and minimal practical experience. American airmen possessed hundreds of hours practicing emergency procedures, formation flying, and navigation under adverse conditions. This preparation gap became decisive when captured airmen maintained discipline despite conditions that would break theoretically trained personnel. Psychological resilience engineering. The American military discovered that psychological resilience could be systematically developed through progressive stress exposure combined with support systems that maintained individual dignity and personal worth. German training relied on breaking individual will to create group conformity. American methods strengthened individual character while building team cohesion. This approach produced soldiers who maintained personal integrity under pressure rather than depending on external authority for psychological stability. Integration of combat experience. By 1944, American training programs incorporated 3 years of combat lessons from multiple theaters. Instructor pilots included veterans of North African, Pacific, and European operations who provided realistic preparation for capture scenarios. Block 58, Buchenwald concentration camp. August 25, 1944. SS Unterscharführer Franz Dietrich had overseen prisoner accommodations for 18 months. Block 58, a converted horse stable measuring 20 by 7 feet, normally housed 12 desperate inmates who fought over floor space and scraps of bread. The Americans transformed it into something Dietrich had never witnessed. 68 Allied airmen occupied the identical space that reduced other prisoners to animal behavior within days. Instead of the expected chaos, Dietrich observed a functioning military unit. Squadron Leader Lamason designated sleeping assignments in precise rows. Officers claimed no additional space despite their rank. Enlisted men maintained military courtesy despite starvation rations. Dietrich consulted his predecessor's notes about previous occupants. Russian political prisoners had formed competing survival groups within hours. French resistance members spent weeks establishing informal hierarchies. Jewish families from Hungary simply waited to die. The Americans operated as if Block 58 were temporary barracks rather than a death sentence. September 3, 1944, the work refusal crisis. Camp Commandant SS Oberführer Hermann Pister summoned Lamason to his office with confidence born from 2 years of successful prisoner management. Every Block 58 occupant would report to the adjacent V2 rocket production facility. Skilled airmen could contribute technical expertise while unskilled personnel performed manual labor. Pister anticipated routine compliance. Concentration camp conditions eliminated prisoner choice within weeks of arrival. Hunger, exhaustion, and witnessing daily executions reduced human beings to survival instinct. The Americans had endured 3 weeks of standard conditioning. Lamason's response shattered Pister's psychological framework. The New Zealand officer stood at attention, maintained eye contact, and delivered a formal military refusal. His men were legitimate prisoners of war protected by Geneva Convention protocols. They would not participate in German weapons production under any circumstances. Pister had broken French generals, Russian colonels, and British intelligence officers through systematic pressure application. None had maintained military bearing after experiencing Buchenwald's reality. Lamason spoke as if commanding a squadron rather than surviving a death camp. The impossible psychology SS Hauptscharführer Weber observed daily roll call with growing confusion. Standard prisoners shuffled into approximate lines, eyes downcast, spirits crushed by systematic dehumanization. The Americans formed perfect military formations despite identical treatment. Weber studied individual airmen for signs of psychological breakdown. Lieutenant James Hastings from Chicago maintained precise posture despite 20-pound weight loss. Captain William Percival from Detroit answered German commands with military courtesy rather than fearful compliance. Sergeant Roy Allen from California organized enlisted men into support networks that strengthened rather than competed. The behavior violated every psychological principle Weber understood about human response to extreme stress. Buchenwald's environment was scientifically designed to destroy individual identity and reduce prisoners to basic survival instinct. These Americans grew stronger through collective discipline that seemed to intensify under pressure. September 15, 1944. The execution threat Pister escalated pressure through proven psychological warfare. He assembled all 68 airmen in the camp's execution courtyard where thousands had died. Guards positioned machine guns with theatrical precision. The commandant delivered his ultimatum in perfect English learned during pre-war university studies. Squadron Leader Lamason would order his men to work or watch them die individually, starting with the youngest enlisted personnel. The psychological pressure had broken every previous prisoner leader within minutes of similar demonstrations. Lamason requested permission to address his men. Pister granted it, expecting to witness the final collapse of American military discipline. Instead, the New Zealand officer delivered orders that stunned German observers. The Americans would maintain military bearing regardless of consequences. Officers would assume responsibility for all enlisted personnel. Every man would follow established chain of command until death. No airman would reveal operational intelligence or participate in weapons production. Weber watched 67 airmen respond with precision drill movements that belonged on parade grounds, not in execution courtyards. Their synchronized compliance with Lamason's orders demonstrated group psychology that German training had never encountered. The Guards' psychological crisis SS personnel experienced cognitive dissonance that undermined their fundamental worldview. 2 years of successful prisoner management had convinced them that extreme conditions inevitably reduced human beings to survival instinct. The Americans maintained collective discipline that grew stronger under increased pressure. Guard shifts began reporting his impossible behavior to supervisors. Americans shared food rations equally despite starvation. Sick personnel received group care rather than abandonment. Officers maintained command responsibilities without coercive authority. The military structure functioned through voluntary compliance that German psychology couldn't explain. Dietrich questioned his understanding of human nature. SS training emphasized that extreme stress revealed true character. Civilized behavior was superficial conditioning that disappeared under genuine pressure. These prisoners maintained military courtesy, shared resources equally, and supported weakest members despite conditions that reduced other humans to desperate competition. October 2, 1944, the communication network. German intelligence discovered something that violated every security protocol. American prisoners had established communication networks that operated across camp boundaries. Messages reached other prisoner blocks, work details, and somehow extended beyond Buchenwald's perimeter. Weber interrogated Russian prisoners who worked at nearby Nora airfield. They admitted carrying verbal messages from American airmen to Luftwaffe ground crews. The content shocked German security officers. Formal military communications requesting proper prisoner of war treatment and notification to Allied authorities. The Americans treated concentration camp imprisonment as a temporary administrative error rather than death sentence. Their communications maintained military protocol and professional courtesy that suggested unshakable confidence in eventual rescue or liberation. The industrial sabotage discovery V2 production supervisors reported systematic equipment failures whenever American prisoners were forced into work details. Tools disappeared, machinery malfunctioned, and production quotas dropped dramatically. The sabotage was invisible but devastatingly effective. German engineers couldn't identify specific acts of destruction. The Americans possessed technical knowledge that enabled subtle interference with complex manufacturing processes. Their resistance wasn't dramatic rebellion. It was professional military operations conducted under impossibly constrained conditions. Production manager Heinrich Dornberger demanded American removal from all technical assignments. Their expertise exceeded German expectations, and their resistance capabilities threatened critical weapons programs. October 10, 1944, the Psychological Victory Camp medical personnel reported unprecedented statistics. Standard Buchenwald mortality rates averaged 20% monthly due to starvation, disease, and systematic execution. Among the American airmen, 0 deaths from despair, minimal disease transmission, and group psychology that maintained morale despite extreme conditions. Dr. Gerhard Rose, the camp's medical officer, documented psychological resilience that contradicted established concentration camp science. Previous prisoner studies showed inevitable personality disintegration under prolonged stress. The Americans demonstrated collective strength that actually increased during extended imprisonment. Weber realized the fundamental error in German psychological assessment. American military training hadn't produced soft soldiers dependent on luxury. It had created professional warriors whose discipline functioned independently of external conditions. The command crisis SS leadership faced an impossible situation. Standard concentration camp methods failed to break American military structure. Escalating pressure produced stronger collective resistance rather than individual capitulation. The airmen maintained prisoner of war protocols that German personnel couldn't overcome through traditional psychological warfare. Pister's reports to Berlin revealed systematic failure of established concentration camp procedures. The Americans treated Buchenwald as temporary inconvenience rather than permanent defeat. Their confidence suggested resources and capabilities that German intelligence had completely underestimated. The SS had captured American airmen expecting to extract intelligence from broken, demoralized prisoners. Instead, they confronted professional soldiers whose training and psychological preparation exceeded German understanding of human resilience under extreme conditions. Weber understood that American military discipline represented technological advancement as sophisticated as radar or advanced aircraft, systematic development of human psychological capabilities that German training programs couldn't match or counter. Nora Airfield, October 12, 1944. Hauptmann Hans Trautloff inspected his Messerschmitt squadron with growing frustration. Allied bombing had reduced the Luftwaffe to desperate defensive operations, but professional military standards remained sacred. His ground crews maintained aircraft despite parts shortages. His pilots followed international aerial warfare protocols despite overwhelming odds. The Russian prisoner working on fuel systems handed him a folded paper with mechanical parts inventory. Hidden inside was a message that violated everything Trautloff understood about German military honor. From Squadron Leader Phil Lamason, Royal New Zealand Air Force, to German Luftwaffe Command. 168 Allied airmen held illegally at Buchenwald concentration camp in violation of Geneva Convention Article 3. Request immediate transfer to proper prisoner of war facility. We are military personnel, not civilian prisoners. Trautloff read the message 3 times. Airmen belonged in Stalag Luft camps under Luftwaffe administration, not concentration camps under SS control. The Geneva Convention was explicit. Captured military personnel received treatment as prisoners of war, regardless of their alleged crimes. October 14, 1944. The professional crisis. Trautloff presented the message to Oberst Walter Dahl, regional Luftwaffe commander responsible for prisoner of war affairs. Dahl's reaction exceeded mere anger. It approached professional horror. German Air Force reputation depended on honorable treatment of enemy airmen. Luftwaffe pilots shot down over England received proper care in Allied camps. British airmen captured over Germany enjoyed reciprocal courtesy in Stalag Luft facilities. This professional courtesy system maintained civilized warfare standards despite increasing barbarism elsewhere. The SS had shattered this arrangement by illegally diverting legitimate prisoners of war to extermination facilities. Dahl understood the implications immediately. Allied air forces would abandon professional courtesy if they discovered Luftwaffe complicity in concentration camp imprisonment. The command structure conflict. Dahl's emergency report to Luftwaffe headquarters in Berlin exposed fundamental contradictions within German command structure. Heinrich Himmler's SS controlled concentration camps through direct authority from Hitler. Hermann Göring's Luftwaffe administered prisoner of war camps through international military protocols. The airmen at Buchenwald existed in legal limbo that threatened both organizations. Hitler's Terrorflieger decree classified captured airmen as criminals rather than soldiers, justifying SS custody. International law demanded military prisoner treatment under Luftwaffe supervision. Oberst-Lieutenant Werner Mulders, Luftwaffe prisoner of war administration chief, demanded immediate clarification from higher authorities. German military reputation required honorable treatment of captured enemy personnel, regardless of political considerations. October 16, 1944. The inspection demand. Allied bombing raids against nearby V2 production facilities provided Luftwaffe officers with justification for intervention. Nearly 400 concentration camp prisoners died in the attack, raising questions about military personnel safety under SS custody. Trautloff requested permission to inspect conditions at Buchenwald under authority of military prisoner welfare regulations. Dahl approved the inspection as routine verification of airmen safety following combat operations in the area. SS Oberführer Pister received formal notification that Luftwaffe officers would evaluate prisoner conditions and verify compliance with international military protocols. The inspection represented professional courtesy between German military branches, not authority challenge. The Luftwaffe assessment Trautloff arrived at Buchenwald expecting to find demoralized airmen grateful for any improvement in conditions. Instead, he encountered military personnel who maintained professional bearing despite systematic mistreatment. Squadron Leader Lamason's formal report to Trautloff followed proper prisoner of war protocols. The New Zealand officer provided accurate prisoner count, detailed condition assessment, and specific requests for Geneva Convention compliance. His military courtesy impressed German observers accustomed to broken concentration camp inmates. The 67 other airmen demonstrated discipline that belonged in military facilities, not extermination camps. They maintained formations, followed orders from their officers, and treated German inspection as routine prisoner of war administration. Trautloff's professional assessment concluded that these prisoners represented legitimate military personnel illegally held under civilian jurisdiction. Their behavior, training, and military knowledge confirmed prisoner of war status rather than criminal classification. The bureaucratic battle Luftwaffe demands for prisoner transfer created administrative crisis within German command structure. Pister argued that Hitler's direct orders superseded military protocols. SS custody was legally justified and politically necessary. Dahl countered with military necessity arguments. Luftwaffe reputation required honorable treatment of enemy airmen to maintain reciprocal courtesy from Allied air forces. German pilots depended on international military protocols for their own safety when captured. The bureaucratic conflict escalated beyond local authority. Berlin headquarters for both organizations demanded resolution that preserved institutional credibility without contradicting Hitler's directives. October 18, 1944. The professional intervention. General Major Adolf Galland, inspector of fighter aircraft, received detailed reports about the Buchenwald situation through Luftwaffe command channels. As Germany's most experienced fighter commander, Galland understood that professional military reputation transcended political considerations. Galland's intervention carried weight beyond normal bureaucratic processes. His combat record and personal relationship with Göring enabled direct access to highest Luftwaffe authority. More importantly, his reputation among German pilots created moral authority that SS officers couldn't challenge. The inspector's assessment was uncompromising. German Air Force credibility required immediate correction of the Buchenwald situation. Allied discovery of concentration camp imprisonment would justify retaliation against German airmen in Allied custody. The SS resistance Himmler's organization fought the transfer demand through political channels that emphasized Hitler's personal authorization. The Terrorflieger decree represented Führer directive that superseded military protocols and international agreements. SS arguments focused on practical considerations. These airmen had committed war crimes against German civilians through terror bombing. Concentration camp imprisonment was appropriate punishment that deterred future Allied air attacks. The political pressure created impossible positions for German military officers torn between professional honor and political loyalty. Luftwaffe reputation demanded prisoner transfer, while Nazi ideology demanded continued punishment. October 19, 1944. The resolution. The administrative deadlock broke through practical military necessity rather than moral arguments. Allied air superiority threatened German aviation fuel production, aircraft manufacturing, and pilot training facilities. Luftwaffe needed every possible advantage to maintain defensive operations. Professional courtesy with enemy air forces provided tactical benefits that outweighed political considerations. German pilots required reciprocal treatment guarantees from Allied authorities. The Buchenwald situation threatened this essential arrangement. Göring's office issued transfer orders that superseded SS custody through military operational necessity. The airmen would move to Stalag Luftwaffe under standard prisoner of war protocols. Political classifications remained unchanged, but military administration would ensure proper treatment. The professional Victory Trautloft supervised the transfer process with mixture of relief and professional satisfaction. German military honor had prevailed over political expediency through intervention by officers who maintained international military courtesy despite wartime pressures. The American Airmen's response to transfer notification demonstrated why Luftwaffe intervention succeeded. Their continued military bearing and professional courtesy impressed German officers who recognized legitimate soldiers rather than broken criminals. Squadron Leader Lamason's formal thanks to Trautloft followed proper military protocol between professional officers. The New Zealand Airmen acknowledged German Air Force integrity while maintaining appropriate prisoner of war dignity. The command lesson. The Buchenwald intervention revealed fundamental differences between political warfare and military professionalism within German command structure. SS methods succeeded against civilian populations but failed against trained military personnel whose discipline strengthened under pressure. Luftwaffe officers learned that American military training produced psychological resilience that concentration camp conditions couldn't break. These airmen maintained collective strength through systematic preparation that exceeded German understanding of human capabilities under extreme stress. The transfer to Stalag Luft III represented more than administrative correction. It acknowledged American military professionalism that German political warfare couldn't overcome through traditional psychological pressure techniques. Professional German officers had discovered that American training systems produced soldiers whose discipline functioned independently of external conditions, creating military effectiveness that political intimidation couldn't counter or destroy. Stalag Luft III, November 1944. The American airmen who arrived from Buchenwald stunned their fellow prisoners through physical transformation that defied concentration camp statistics. Despite 2 months of starvation rations, systematic psychological pressure, and witnessing daily executions, they maintained military bearing that impressed hardened POW veterans. Captain Robert Rosenthal, a B-17 pilot imprisoned since October 1943, observed the Buchenwald survivors with professional amazement. Standard concentration camp prisoners arrived broken, requiring weeks of rehabilitation before resuming normal conversation. These Americans integrated immediately into established camp routines, maintained perfect military courtesy, and displayed psychological resilience that exceeded anything Rosenthal had witnessed during 13 months of German captivity. The survivors' accounts revealed systematic German miscalculations about American character that extended far beyond individual cases. SS psychological assessment had predicted rapid intelligence breakdown based on assumptions about American softness that proved completely false. German experts misunderstood the industrial democracy that produced warriors whose strength increased under extreme pressure. Spring 1945. The liberation statistics. When American forces liberated prison camps across Germany, medical personnel documented survival rates that validated systematic differences between democratic and totalitarian military training. Standard Buchenwald mortality approached 25% monthly due to starvation, disease, and despair. Among the American airmen, 166 survived of 168 total, a 98.8% survival rate that medical officers initially dismissed as statistical error. Dr. Malcolm Groh, Chief Flight Surgeon of the 8th Air Force, conducted comprehensive medical examinations of returned airmen. His findings challenged fundamental assumptions about human psychology under extreme stress. The Buchenwald survivors demonstrated collective resilience that strengthened rather than weakened through shared adversity. Physical examinations revealed another shocking disparity. Within 6 weeks of liberation, American airmen had gained an average of 53 pounds through proper nutrition and medical care. German prisoners in American custody showed identical rapid recovery, but Soviet and other European prisoners required months of rehabilitation to achieve similar physical restoration. The intelligence revolution post-war interrogation of German personnel exposed catastrophic intelligence failures that originated in totalitarian psychology rather than operational security. SS psychological assessments had completely misread American character through ideological assumptions that proved systematically wrong. Captured documents from SS headquarters revealed detailed plans for extracting strategic intelligence from broken American airmen within 2 weeks of Buchenwald arrival. German interrogators possessed comprehensive technical knowledge about American aircraft, navigation systems, and bombing procedures, but completely misunderstood the human psychology that operated these systems. The failed interrogation program demonstrated fundamental differences between democratic and totalitarian approaches to human development. American training systems produced independent decision-makers whose discipline functioned without external coercion. German methods created efficient followers who collapsed when separated from authority structures. The Nuremberg Testimony. Several Buchenwald survivors testified at war crimes trials, providing evidence that validated American military training systems through the ultimate test of enemy acknowledgement. Their testimony revealed systematic German miscalculations about democratic society's ability to produce professional warriors. SS Oberführer Hermann Peister's trial testimony included specific admissions about American prisoner behavior that contradicted German psychological theories. The camp commandant acknowledged that American military discipline functioned independently of external conditions and strengthened through collective adversity rather than weakening. German military psychologists testified that American training systems produced unexpected psychological resilience that exceeded their scientific understanding of human capabilities under extreme stress. The testimony validated democratic military training through enemy professional assessment. The strategic revelation. The Buchenwald incident exposed broader German miscalculations about American industrial capacity and demographic advantages that shaped entire war strategy. German intelligence had accurately assessed American aircraft production, technological capabilities, and logistical systems, but completely misunderstood the human resources that operated these systems. American democracy had produced not just industrial superiority, but systematic human development that created professional military effectiveness at unprecedented scale. The 168 Airmen at Buchenwald represented larger American capability to maintain military effectiveness despite casualties, setbacks, and extreme adversity. Post-war German military analysis acknowledged that American training systems produced warriors whose individual capabilities exceeded German estimates by significant margins. Democratic society had generated systematic advantages in human development that totalitarian methods couldn't match or counter. The industrial democracy advantage. The fundamental lesson extended beyond military applications to broader comparisons between democratic and totalitarian social systems. American abundance had produced not luxury-dependent weakness, but psychological confidence based on systematic preparation and resource security. German prisoners in American custody experienced cultural shock that reversed expected psychological impacts. They gained weight, received medical care, enjoyed recreational activities, and maintained contact with families. Treatment that demonstrated American resource abundance and systematic humane values. The contrast validated American industrial democracy through practical demonstration rather than theoretical argument. Democratic society had produced both material superiority and systematic human development that totalitarian alternatives couldn't match through coercion or ideology. The modern military legacy contemporary military training programs worldwide adopted American psychological preparation techniques validated through the Buchenwald experience. Survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. ESER training became standard procedure based on lessons learned from airmen who maintained military effectiveness under ultimate pressure. The systematic approach to human development that enabled 98.8% survival rates under concentration camp conditions became the foundation for modern military psychology and leadership training. Democratic methods of building individual resilience while maintaining group cohesion proved superior to authoritarian alternatives. The final American victory. The Buchenwald Airmen achieved the ultimate military victory. They forced enemy acknowledgement of American superiority through professional performance under impossible conditions. German military officers intervened to transfer them precisely because their discipline demonstrated capabilities that exceeded German understanding. Squadron Leader Phil Lamason's post-war assessment captured the broader significance. We maintained military bearing not despite the conditions, but because our training prepared us for exactly these circumstances. American democracy had given us resources that totalitarian systems couldn't understand or counter. The 166 survivors returned to America as living proof that democratic society produced warriors whose strength increased under pressure, whose discipline functioned independently of external conditions, and whose collective effectiveness exceeded totalitarian alternatives through systematic human development that transformed individual citizens into professional soldiers capable of victory under any circumstances.